Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of TC Talk, back today with another video. And in today's video, I wanted to kind of talk about my general thoughts on Lexi and Living Legend and some of the BNR announcement stuff. Just kind of give general thoughts on things I think could quell some people's frustration, but also help others understand people's frustration when it comes to like decisions that LSS has to make about this. Just a general fun, objective topic, and kind of get your thoughts on it as a community. But if you're new to the channel, welcome. Thank you so much for stopping by. Hopefully you enjoy your stay. If you're a long-standing supporter, thank you so much as always. Feel free to check out the Patreon and the Discord down below. So there's been a lot of talk about Lexi, and if you weren't aware, you can go watch my previous video where I kind of go over my reaction to the ban and suspension announcement. And basically, they are moving Bullseye Bracers from banning to suspended once Lexi Living Legends and Bullseye Bracers will come back. But the key component was there was two things. One, they're not making any changes to Lexi. They're just going to let Lexi kind of ride out her time and, you know, ride into the sunset of Living Legends, so to speak. And then they're also going to have a ban and suspension announcement 11 days before Worlds, in order to potentially Living Legend her and or Iceland or anyone else. It's probably going to be her and Icelander, if anybody. So I wanted to say that, one, this is going to be super objective. There's no spice here. This is just my opinion. So if you're looking for spiciness, I'm sorry. But I want to kind of give a kind of concerted opinion that I think is good to at least share and get your thoughts on. And one is Lexi, not making any changes to Lexi. The TLDRs, I think it's the right decision, right? I think they made the right thing to just let her ride out. Is it going to suck, air quotes, for a PQ season while she rides out? Yes. Right. If you don't like Lexi in the format right now, you're going to have to deal with her for like, what, 2 more months? Not even, pretty much. Yeah, like 2 more months. And I can see how that would upset some people. But the thing is like, there's a couple ways to look at this. One, and I put this on Twitter. I'm basically regurgitating what I said on Twitter, but I wanted to put in a video and kind of get the YouTube community's thoughts in case you don't follow me on Twitter, which you should, regardless, is I can see why like people would be upset about Lexi, but calling a spade, like I said on Twitter, is Tales of Aria was a design mistake, right? Not design mistake in like an overly negative way. I'm not saying here like bashing LSS. Please, for the love of God, don't take it that way. I'm just saying like that set was extremely powerful. I always tell people, regardless of what you think of Chain and Prism and Monarch 1, like the first Monarch set, from top to bottom, Tales of Aria is the most powerful set that Flesh and Blood has put out. The talent system completely changed everything. Yes, we had Light and Shadow before that, but like Earth and Lightning and all that, and Ice specifically, really caused a shift in power level and power creep that the game was not ready for, right? And it just completely dominated the meta, right? I saw on Twitter something about like Ice has like over like 50% of the LL points since it came out, or something crazy, where Ice heroes have like an insane margin of total LL points since it came out. And I think that LSS just wants the set gone, and they're never going to bring it back unless they have some major tuning, right? Or they bring the power level down substantially. I think when Tales of Aria came out and Monarch was right before that, or decently before that, I think that they basically said, crap, we need to bring the power level back down over the course of the next few years, and I think that's what they did, and they're doing that. You can tell by the legendaries they're putting out. The legendaries are still extremely flavorful, extremely fun. The heroes are super fun, but they're not Tales, right? And they're not Monarch. Like even Monarch 2, I think, was a good example of that. It showed LSS's new take on power level, and I think that they just want that set gone, right, for the most part, and they want it to just be out of the metagame. So I think that I can't prove that. I think that though, whether consciously or subconsciously, that was a factor in their decision making, right? The second thing I wanted to bring up, and I brought this up on Twitter again, is I think when you're formulating your opinions on this stuff, I think you need to think about it in other perspectives. And I know that everyone has their own opinion, everyone has their own bias, myself included, right? When Oldheim was a prominent deck, I was very upset, obviously, being a Katsu and an aggro player in general. So I get it. But there's several if you're thinking truly objectively with Flesh and Blood is a very competitive game, extremely competitive game. It is the most competitive TCG on the market. I don't think anyone can argue that. The only game that's even remotely as competitive when it comes to community sentiment is One Piece, I think. And even One Piece, there's definitely, it's a little bit different. But because of that, there's several rungs of competitive players, because a majority of, in my opinion at least, maybe I'm wrong, they probably have the hard data for this, a majority of like the consistent players in the game are competitive minded, right? And there's 3 rungs of competitive players in my opinion. There's top level players, right? You have your Mara Faris, your Michael Hamiltons, your Pablo Venturas, your Fino Black. Like, I'm not going to name all of them because I know I'm going to leave someone out. You have those top level players, right? The players that can shift with the metagame, are constantly tuning and changing, whether they play the best deck in the format or they know how to play against the best deck at all times. They usually have testing teams. They're able to make quick decisions and pivot off of things a lot better than your casual, even your hyper-competitive player, right? That's one rung. Your second rung, which is the majority, is your hyper-competitive mid-level players. Your players that are going to callings at their height, maybe 1 or 2 a year. They're going to ProQuest, they're going to skirmishes, they're going to Road to Nationals, right? And then trying to maybe qualify for Nats. Like, I would say I'm in the bottom rung of your mid-level competitive players. I wouldn't even maybe put me at mid-level, but that's the majority of your players, right? And then your third rung is you have your newly competitive players that finally got the money or got the motivation to spend the money on their first deck, right? Maybe they got a Blitz deck, maybe they got a semi-tuned deck, right? It's where I was during Monarch, where I wanted to play Katsu. I bought got all the normal cards from my community, and also bought a couple to kind of have a decent Katsu deck, but I didn't have Mask of Momentum, right? I had Hope Merchant's Hood, and I played with that for like 3 months before I was able to buy my Mask of Momentum. And then when I bought my Mask of Momentum, I now was what I call a newly birthed competitive player, right? Where I finally have the tune deck I need. I spent the $500+, $700+ at this point for a tune deck. I have all my Command and Conquers, or all my sideboard tech pieces, or all my Warmonger's Diplomacies in the side or something. But as far as the core idea of the deck I play, I have all the cards. That's the third rung, right? So the reason I think that, even though I overall agree with what they did with Lexi, I can see why people are upset, because players in rung 2 and 3 have a way higher chance of being upset than players in rung 1. Rung 1, the high competitive players, they're just going to shift with the metagame, right? They think the metagame, I don't mean in a negative way. Their perception is that the metagame is healthy because they're able to pivot better. They have the knowledge base, they have the testing teams, they have all these things, they have the tools available to combat even things that seem unfun or seem different. Like Oldheim was a very big skill check, right? There were certain decks that were good against it, certain decks that could beat it. You just had to know how to play it. But the thing is, not every player has the capability to do that, right? Not every player has the capability to pitch stack. Not every player is going to make all the right decisions all the time. A large majority actually aren't going to. So it really depends on, you can't really use that as a reference point, and I don't think that that's fair. The second and third thing, and that wasn't to, shit on competitive players top level. It's just, that's just their purview. Rungs 2 and 3, I think, have some reason to be frustrated. Rung 2, the mid-level competitive players, right? You have your players that have invested a lot, maybe into their certain hero, or they're decent. I'm missing a use term meta. Junkies is a thing where they're switching between a couple different decks to try to combat the meta, but they feel like they've kind of hit a wall, right? And some people want to be competitive, but they don't want to be a meta junkie, right? They don't want to have to constantly switch and play the best deck. So it feels bad to have this one hero that just is gatekeeping them from playing certain decks or certain things. Now, in card games, there's always going to be a best deck. There's always going to be a best thing, but I can see why they'd be frustrated, right? If I'm even a Katsu player, Katsu's doing really well. He has some top 8s, actually pretty consistent. But when you play Lexi as a Katsu, I'm going to say it right now, I don't care what Katsu players tell you. If the Lexi draws the right cards, you lose. You have to hot draw to beat a Lexi. You can beat a Lexi as a Katsu, but you have to hope to God they don't hit any Rain Raiders or 3 of a kinds in the first 4 turns. and you have to hit your Surging Strike combo pieces almost every turn because they can just race you. Like there's nothing you can really do. So having that situation where it's like I want to play this hero or even I want to play this archetype, but I can't. Right? It makes it really hard. Like for example, like Uziri. Once Lexi leaves, like Uziri is a really strong hero still, but she's gonna be gatekept a little bit because Jormai is gonna be the best deck in the format or the most played, and Uziri has a hard time into that deck. And so I can see, like, once Lexi leaves and Icelander leaves, I could see Uziri players being a little bit annoyed because they can't play their best deck. So that's where the mid-level stuff comes into play, and I think that some people are just frustrated because they're like, man, I can't enjoy the game at a competitive level. And some people's responses are, it's a game. Like, why are you so upset? Like, why would you not play or whatever? And I think that's unfair to say because this game is competitive-minded. If you feel because most Flesh and Blood players are in the competitive mindset, if they feel that they can't play competitively, there's no reason to play. And that sounds really bad to say, and it sounds negative, and it's not meant to sound negative. But right now, Flesh and Blood's weakness is casual play. There is no casual play. There's very little. We have UPF, we have Commoner, we have Blitz and stuff like that. And sure, they can be not competitive. They can be casual. But the thing is, just because you have a casual format doesn't mean you have a casual community. Like, I know for a fact, I have never once been to an armory that feels casual. Now, I live in Dallas where you have like Brody Spurlock and all these crazy players at armories and stuff, so it's a little bit skewed. But even when I was living in North Carolina, there's not much like sure, someone might bring a fun deck every once in a while, but maybe y'all are different. Please tell me in the comments below if y'all's armories are more casual. But to me, the weekly event of Flesh and Blood is 10 times less casual than a Magic weekly or a One Piece weekly, because I've been on all those, or a My Hero Academia weekly. Like in all those other games, you definitely can come in and people are just having fun pet decks. People are like messing around. Your locals deck is a very common term in like My Hero Academia and One Piece. It's in Magic even. It's not like that in Flesh and Blood. So that mid-level, again, the Rung 2, the rarely passionate, hyper-competitive mid-level player, if they feel like they can't be competitive, they have no reason to play in their minds, or lesser reason to play, right? So I can see why they're upset. The second one I'll do as quickly as the third one, the newly competitive player. This one's pretty simple. Like, it's a big feels bad if you tell a player to be competitive like all these other people around you, right, and to catch up with the group, you have to essentially spend around $700 on a deck. The average Flesh and Blood deck, I could do another video. I've done several videos like this if you go back in my videos. The average competitive deck average is around $750 to $800 for a fully tuned competitive deck. And that's to go to like a big event or something. The cheapest competitive decks are like $400, $500. And the most expensive ones are like $1,000. So to be able to tell someone like let's take Katsu, for example, which is one of the cheaper competitive decks to build. If I tell you have to build a $600 Katsu deck, and oh, by the way, the two top decks in the format just absolutely destroy you, which is Icelander, not destroy you, but it's hard to play into in Icelander and Lexi, it feels bad, right? Or if I tell someone to build a Uziri deck, which is one of the most expensive decks to build from a core concept because you have Command and Conquers and stuff like that and Shakedowns and the equipment pieces with Tunic and stuff like that, to tell them to spend almost $1,000 on a Uziri deck and then tell them like, hey, yeah, this deck, once Lexi leaves, it's pretty much going to be unplayable because Dromai is going to be the top deck in the format, and you're a near auto loss into any competent Dromai player. You basically have to high roll, right? Like me looking at my Uziri deck right now, the pricing is $980. So to tell someone like to spend money on a $980 deck is pretty crazy when they might not even be able to play that deck competitively. Like for me to tell someone like, I want you to go from casual to competitive, you should really get involved in our community. And they're like, whoa, I like I like Rhinar. I love Rhinar. How good is Rhinar? It's like, oh, well, Rhinar's, some people put top of them, but he's really not that good. Well, then why would I spend $600 on a Rhinar deck? You know what I mean? So it's a healthy problem, but that's the problem they face. And I can see people's frustration. This all goes back to the original point, which is letting Lexi ride off is good. I think let her get out of the format as quickly as possible. You don't want her lingering with like a slightly nerfed version. Like we don't want another Briar situation, but I think it would be even worse where Lexi's good enough to like top events and be a menace and be a little bit of a meta call, but also not enough to get out of the meta fast enough. So overall, I think it's a smart choice. I just want people to see like there's different levels of players when you're talking about these things, and I think people need to understand that and need to be able to sympathize with it a little bit, and don't just like discredit people for being frustrated. I know LSS doesn't. They definitely don't. They are super, super awesome about everything. They're very clear communication. Like, regardless if you agree or disagree, you can never say LSS has not been communicative. They are very communicative in a lot of their stuff. So, and as a marketer, someone who comes from like a marketing background, they do an amazing job at PR and communication. So, hopefully they keep that up. But yeah, let me know what your thoughts are. This wasn't meant to be like a rant, like a negative rant. It was meant to just kind of put my thoughts out there and see what people think. Agree, disagree, whatever it may be, let me know. I'd be really interested to hear y'all's thoughts on this. But yeah, if you like this type of content, please leave a like, comment, subscribe. Let me know what else you want to see. I literally have like 30 video ideas in the Discord right now in the video suggestions tab that I'm just like cranking away through. This week I'm going to be doing like, should you play Katsu or Fi? So that should be fun. But let me know what else you'd like to see. And yeah, thank y'all so much for coming to my channel. And yeah, I'll see y'all next time on TC Talk.